welcome to Get Paid for Your Pad, the definitive show on Airbnb hosting, featuring the best advice on how to maximize profits from your Airbnb listing, as well as real-life experiences from Airbnb hosts all over the world. Welcome. We are your hosts, Josefa Kapadia and Jasper Rivers.
Get paid for your pad. 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 Get paid for your pad.
Welcome everybody, episode number 103 of Get Paid for Your Pad. First of all, apologies for missing an episode last week. I've been really busy. I'm here in Vegas working on the program, and it's been super intense. So unfortunately I had to miss one episode, but now I'm back. And I'm here with Chris Lee from New York, and Chris is a super host. He's also an active member of the Couchsurfing community. So we're going to talk all about that. Well, Chris, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Jasper. Pleasure to be here.
How are you doing today?
It's a little hot and humid in New York City, but you can't complain. It's a great city to live in.
Yeah, we're just talking about it. I'm in Vegas right now, and it's like 115, 120 degrees almost sometimes, and because the air is so dry, it doesn't really feel like it's that hot. You're not sweating, so that's a little bit different in New York.
Yeah, and stay away from those slot machines, Jasper.
Yeah, I'm not really into those. I don't really enjoy sitting in front of a bunch of fruits and pulling a stick every like 5 seconds. It always surprises me, actually, when I'm here in Vegas to see how many people can sit behind these machines for hours and hours without getting bored.
Exactly. I don't understand this whole phenomenon of being in front of a slot machine either.
But to each his own. But let's talk about Airbnb.
Yes, I'm an active user of Airbnb. Love their site, and I've surfed actually most recently in Sweden for a friend's wedding. Stayed in Södermalm using Airbnb, and it was definitely a great experience, a hands-on experience from that host who gave me a first-hand perspective of Stockholm, Sweden. And I find it, whether I use it as a traveler and or host, is definitely the right way to go. I mean, I definitely could shell out the money to stay at a hotel, but I like that hands-on experience from a local host to give me the perspective of what a Stockholm, Sweden experience is. And the same for when I have people in New York City, I like to give them that authentic New York experience.
I'm actually going to Stockholm in 2 weeks, coincidentally.
Oh, nice. Well, you definitely have to visit Södermalm and also Gamla stan, which is the old town of Sweden.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I've been going there every summer, actually. It's one of my favorite cities.
Definitely a beautiful time to be there in the summertime.
Exactly, yeah. In the wintertime, it gets a little depressing, a little cold and dark.
Cold and dark, exactly.
So how long have you been hosting on Airbnb?
I've been active since 2012, and I have some guests that will be coming from France later today, and I'm really excited about hosting them and giving them, again, a first-hand perspective of New York City. We might see some Broadway shows together, go check out some local jazz venues. I'll give them a first-hand perspective on my favorite restaurants, and actually use a tool called Hostfully. And it's a great tool that hosts can use to advertise basically the need-to-knows about your pad and, so to speak, your favorite jazz clubs and or eating places and or museums and so forth. Yeah. So I find that as a good tool, Hostfully. I would recommend anyone to check that out.
Well, I know about Hostfully because I'm using it, and they're also sponsoring this podcast now. So definitely heard of Hostfully. So let's talk a little bit about your listing.
Okay.
Are you renting out a room or a full apartment or house?
I have a 2 bedroom, and usually I have the second bedroom as active listing.
Okay, and you're the type of host who gets pretty involved with your guests. Like you spend a lot of time with them, you do things together.
Yeah, I mean, if the evening hours, New York has quite the nightlife, so I'm more than welcome to give the hands-on nightlife tour, whether it be a live jazz or I'm a Lindy Hop dancer. So I love jazz music and big band music. So like I'll take them out Lindy Hop dancing, and kind of the social experience of being in a jazz club.
What is Lindy Hop dancing?
Lindy Hop actually is a dance that was created in the ballrooms of Harlem in the 1930s and 40s, and it was named after Charles Lindbergh's Hop the Atlantic. And yeah, it's danced throughout the world. There was an ambassador of Lindy Hop by the name of Frankie Manning who kind of spread this globally. He would be equivalent to the ambassador of jazz, which would be Louis Armstrong. And he was my teacher, and actually he was responsible for a lot of this subculture, which is a swing dance culture. Let it be swing dancing. I'm a swinger, but swing dancing, not the other kind of swinger. And but yeah, so like he was responsible for creating the social dance, and actually how it could relate to what I'm doing as a host, whether it be through couchsurfing or Airbnb. Early on, as a Lindy Hop or swing dancer, we would open our homes to visiting dancers from Sweden, from France, from Germany. If we had like a festival, let's say like in Sacramento, California, or San Francisco, California, we'd have people from Chicago come and visit, and they would say, hey, like, I'm coming in for the weekend for this dance festival. Can we crash on your couch, or can you lay out some air mattresses? So very early on, before Airbnb and before couchsurfing, I would host or I would surf different cities, and that's why I made the world a much smaller place, and I built friends around the world. So when I go to Sweden, France, Spain, Germany, it feels very easy to acclimate myself into that city, even if I've never been there before.
Very cool. And for the people who don't know what couchsurfing is, can you give a quick description?
It's just a community. It's a really neat thing. It's actually a community-based organization that offers events like in each city. Let's say you pop in there, you're not necessarily looking for a place all the time or a couch. Let's say if I go to Stockholm, Sweden, for instance, I have enough friends there where I don't need to like pop onto Airbnb and or couchsurfing. Even though I used my last 2 days, I used Airbnb and stayed at a place in Södermalm. What's appealing about couchsurfing is it's a community-based website where you can find out what local events are happening. Okay, like there'll be community leaders that will have events like, hey, we're going bar hopping, and they'll make a couchsurfing event, which is cool. So like if you pop into, let's say, Paris for a couple of days and you don't have anything planned out and you're like, I wonder what's going on in Paris, you can pop onto the couchsurfing app and you can see what's going on in Paris those 2 days. And maybe there's another surfer that says, hey, let's meet up for coffee or drinks. Or there might be a bigger event, meetup, where you have like 150 people going to a Yankees game. I actually organize these kind of events in New York too, where I've received 100 free tickets for the Yankees, and I've taken, people to their first American baseball experience. Like, just had one recently where, I had to explain the game of baseball, which is kind of, if you're growing up as an American, it's the fabric of your being. But like if you have someone from Russia or Germany or different countries, they're more tend to know something about soccer, and then like to explain like a hit and run or like a double steal or a full count, can be challenging, but it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to that. I was at a LA Lakers game. No, not the Lakers, Dodgers. The LA Dodgers. I was at a game a couple of weeks ago in LA. And I spent probably the first hour just asking my friend questions about, what all those numbers mean on the screen, the averages, and like it gets pretty complicated.
Exactly. And I think that what I liked about hosting that event is it was actually a gathering, again, of all these different cultures and different countries. And it was more about the gathering rather than it was about the baseball game. And people were like laughing and joking and, having a drink or two. And just, it was a good time.
And how do you combine couchsurfing with Airbnb?
I mean, as a user, I would tend to say that when I go into a different country and I'm using either Airbnb and or Couchsurfing, I like to just get that first hands-on experience. If I'm not familiar with the city, I was in Vilnius this year for a music and dance festival, and I decided to use Airbnb and stay with Airbnb hosts. And they were able to give me the firsthand perspective of Vilnius. And I've already had some friends there that were teaching at this Lindy Hop or swing dance festival, so it didn't feel like I needed to use couchsurfing in order to find like an event to do. But as a user, that's what I mainly use it for. As a host, I tend to say that I like to do the opposite. I like to give that firsthand perspective. It's like reciprocating. If someone comes into your city, you want to give them. You feel like you're an ambassador of not only your city, but you're like their first experience. Let's say if they've never been to America before, like you want to give them a good feeling about not only you and the city, but about your country. And there's a lot of pride that goes into that too.
And just to be clear, couchsurfing is, it's not only a community, but it's also a platform where you can find accommodations, right? Like I tend to call
Exactly.
it the Airbnb, but you're not charging.
Exactly. Yeah.
I'm trying to understand how you combine it to as a host. So do you use Couchsurfing to fill up your gaps in your Airbnb calendar, or do you block off certain dates in your Airbnb calendar to host on Couchsurfing, or how does that work?
That's a great question, Jasper. I think when I get a really thoughtful email or message as a request, I definitely consider it. Like I get a million requests on Couchsurfing for people to stay with me, and if it's really thoughtful and well written, not like a cut and paste, then I consider it, and I'm like, hey, this person sounds amazing, and I'd like to learn more about their culture. And I've been to this country before, and like I feel like had such a good experience there. Let me pay it forward and help this person out. And then the same thing that goes with the Airbnb platform. Like I don't accept every request. There's times where I just have my whole space or my pad to myself, and I'm happy with that. I just kind of like look at each individual request separately and see if we're like a good match, and that's how I go about it.
Okay, so you're really looking to connect with somebody. You're really doing the Airbnb and the couchsurfing to meet new people. It's not necessarily a financial motivation for you.
It's not a financial motivation for me whatsoever.
Very cool, very cool. So you've been doing Airbnb since 2012, and you're in New York. Which area was it?
Lower Manhattan, which would be Lower East Side.
Lower East Side. Okay. So
yeah.
I know there's been some controversy over Airbnb. There's been a lot of regulations that have been put into place, and I've heard about hosts getting shut down and stuff. Have the regulations affected you at all, or no?
I mean, they actually haven't come into play, so to speak, as they would in San Francisco. I think that there's a close eye on it. And again, like it's not financially driven. Like if they decide to close shop here in New York, so to speak, I'll still continue to use a platform like Couchsurfing to meet people from around the world, and I'm happy to host.
Okay, so you haven't had any problems so far, with the authorities?
No, not whatsoever.
Okay, that's great. That's good to hear. Do you have any recommendations for people who are looking to start on Airbnb?
Well, that's hard to say. Like, I think everyone is their own individual. It depends on what their expectations are. If they're financially driven, I mean, I would say be very organized and like using a tool again like Hostfully, where it makes it easy with one link to access your Wi-Fi and or how to check in and what the best public transportation to get to your pad and to the museums and I think that just being organized is half the battle, but then also like you have to have a certain level of friendliness. You can't just do it and expect to be successful if you don't treat it like your baby too. Like I mean, I always like to say it's like having a grandmother. You know, like would you treat your grandmother bad, or would you take the time and care for it? So
Yeah, that makes sense. And since you're really looking for that connection, one interesting topic I think to talk about is when you have your guests staying at your house. Some guests, they want their privacy and they kind of want to do their own thing, whereas other guests, they're really looking to hang out with the host. How do you get a sense for what your guest wants to do?
well, I mean, I fill them out. I actually I send them a message saying, here are the highlights of a short list of my favorite things in New York, and they'll reciprocate like, oh, that's a great list, and how much can we do in that short period of time? I was just recently in San Francisco, and I actually got called for jury duty, and I deferred 3 times. So I thought, okay, well, better do the civic duty and go out there and do it. And I was able to only do 1 day of jury duty. I had to make myself available for the entire week. So then I had a short impromptu vacation in San Francisco. So I popped on to, couch surfing, and then I was able to connect with another surfer, and we were able to, surf, do all the highlights of like Pier 39, and we had a great time in San Francisco, and then she came to New York City, and we just continued on, and now we built this lifetime friendship. So I don't know if that answers the question, or if I kind of went off the beaten path there, but what was the question again, Jasper? I'm sorry.
Well, I get a lot of questions from listeners, and one question that pops up a lot is people asking, "Hey, how much should I interact with my guest? How do I know whether my guest wants to hang out and do all sorts of things together, or whether my guest wants their privacy and kind of like wants to do their own thing?"
Well, I'm an actor and dancer, so I just read the body language of the person and kind of like immediately when we're not playing Pokemon Go and like on our cell phones, we actually make eye contact. Half the time when you meet some people from Europe, it's really intimate. It's like you don't shake hands. The French kiss each other, and it's just like you read the people's body language and you see if they want that firsthand experience, or you just give them the key and they say, okay, this is what I've already have a plan, and this is what I want to do, and then you let them go off and do their own thing. It's just each person's different.
Do you also, when you filter, when you select your guests, do you have a preference? Like, do you, for example, consciously choose the people that you think will want to have a more personal experience and build a friendship, etc.?
I'd be very careful here because I'm not the one to discriminate against any guests that have come here. I've hosted several different countries and different cultures, so like I really don't have a preference, but I do enjoy that connection. Like of course, like if someone is like a salsa dancer, we already have something in common because we do social dancing. Even though I'm not a salsa dancer, I'm a swing dancer. It's interesting to like, oh, okay, you're also a partner. You do partner dancing. So like, let's answer that email and see, how we connect as hosts and guests, and I've hosted families and couples and just day travelers. It's just a mixed bag of chips.
Yeah. And I think you mentioned a good point actually, because I always recommend that people on their profile describe as much as possible about themselves, because from the perspective of the guest, I think the guest also can think that way. Like if let's say you're like a scuba diver, and you see in the profile of a host that person is a scuba diver as well,
right?
Then you're probably more likely to want to stay with that with that particular host. And so, having an elaborate profile where you talk a lot about what your hobbies are, what kind of person you are, what are the things that you enjoy doing, I think that can also help to create those matches.
I totally agree with you. I couldn't agree with you more.
I've tried a couple digital guidebook tools these past months and I've decided to use Hostfully. I use Hostfully to create an online and printable guidebook to show my guests my favorite coffee places in town and my listing information. My guests' feedback has been great. They've used my recommendations and I'm getting fewer questions from my guests as a result. I've included screenshots of my guidebook on Airbnb as a way to differentiate my listing from others. So make your own guidebook at hostfully.com/pad.
So let's talk a little bit about your experience so far. It sounds like you've had really good experiences with Airbnb as a host as well as a traveler. Have you ever run into any issues or any uncomfortable situations?
No, none of them come to mind. I mean, actually, I've had nothing but positive experiences, knock on wood.
So maybe you have some remarkable experience.
Yeah, I mean, each guest that I've hosted taught me something about their culture and their country, and lifelong friendships. I mean, I've been to several countries, and I've met with people I've hosted before over a cup of coffee, or I'm a big postcard guy. I love sending postcards through the U.S. mail. When I was in Sweden, I probably sent off close to 100 postcards to friends and family and previous people that I've hosted. It's like pen pals too. I mean, it's great. I enjoy it very much.
What do you think about the future of Airbnb?
Well, I think sky's the limit for that company. I mean, it definitely offers a service that needs to be filled, because I like the interaction of staying at someone's home rather than a hotel, and then meeting people that can give me a firsthand perspective of their city. And when I stay with superhosts in the past, I've had great experiences, where they'll have like a guidebook similar to Hostfully, maybe in their different way. Maybe it's a printed out version, and they were very organized, and I was able to see a whole city in 3 days, just based upon okay, these are the highlights. Stay away from this place, but definitely do this. In New York, one of the favorite things I love to do is to take the East River Ferry at Pier 11. That will run you between $4 and $6, depending if it's a weekday or weekend. And that ferry takes you on the East River underneath the Brooklyn Bridge, the Manhattan Bridge, and the Williamsburg Bridge. And it dumps you off into Williamsburg. So you have a gorgeous view of Manhattan. I tell my guests, take this East River Ferry. Even people that I meet, at a Starbucks, I'll get in a conversation with a Swedish family and said, I recommend you take this East River Ferry. So it'll run you $4, but then it takes you under 3 bridges. And tourists don't know about this because it's mainly used for a commute by New Yorkers to get to work from Williamsburg to Manhattan. But it's absolutely gorgeous, gorgeous view of Manhattan. And then I say, okay, once you're in Williamsburg, go to Bedford Avenue and walk Bedford Avenue and get a bagel at Bagel Smith, a true New York bagel. And that seems to be everyone that I've told to do this, they're like, that was the best $4 I've ever spent in my life. And you feel gratified that you're oh, I see, I gave that person a happy experience of New York City. And it could be your cousin or your brother or your family members, but it can also be people that you have just met, and it just makes the world a smaller place. And if you're lucky along the way, you'll build some powerful friendships.
Right, and those experiences are great because it's not just that you get to see the best spots and the best places in a certain city, but you also feel kind of a little bit more special, right? You feel oh, I'm doing something that not all the other tourists do. So I think that also contributes to the whole sort of experience that you have as a traveler.
Exactly, and I expect that actually when I when I stay with Airbnb Superhost, I mean, I've come to that conclusion that the people that have achieved like Superhost or they're doing it not solely for financial, they're doing it because they love connecting with people and they love showing off their city. That's what makes it special, and that's what actually sets you apart from the next person.
You mentioned being organized as a host is very important. Are there any other tools that you use to help you manage your Airbnb listing?
No. I mean, I find Hostfully effective, and I mean, I don't use any other online tool.
Okay. Yeah, there's a lot of them out there. Like there's more and more popping up. I almost get emails almost every week from new Airbnb startups. So it's pretty interesting. I think it's a very active niche right now. Lots of stuff going on, and people get pretty creative with all the different tools that that are being created.
Yeah, I mean, everyone has to create a niche market, and I mean, I just saw a great musical here in New York City. It's called Kinky Boots, and the premise was about a fourth generation shoe salesman, and they had to change their company and find a niche market, which were kinky boots. And actually took a surfer last night to see the show, and here's another angle, like someone that's coming in, whether it be if you're hosting for Couchsurfing and or Airbnb, they're not going to know the different discount websites to use, or like they're not going to know, oh, I can buy a $37 obstructed box seat, which has full view of the Broadway show, which would be Kinky Boots we saw last night, for $37. Instead, they would probably pay $147 full price orchestra seat. And the person I was hosting, her name is Annika, and she's from Germany. It was her first Broadway experience, and she thought she was going to pay so much more. And, just having that firsthand perspective, I was able to save her, $100 extra. So, I mean, I like doing those kind of things too. It's a lot of fun.
Awesome. Well, Chris, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been really interesting to hear your perspective. And, good luck with everything, with your acting and your dancing, your Airbnb and your couchsurfing.
Yes, definitely. Thank you, Jasper. And if you come to New York City, I'd like to give you my firsthand perspective of Manhattan.
Absolutely. I'll definitely let you know if I pass by. And for all the listeners, thank you for listening, and we'll see you back next week.
Get paid for your pad. 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 Get paid for your pad.